I have to say, your performance was so impressive because we're so used to seeing you as a nice guy, and to see you open as such an asshole.
Yeah.
It was just liberating and
Thank you.
exciting.
Thank you. It felt liberating to do it. It's fun to be an asshole. Thank you. I shouldn't do this, but I just read this review, this Rope of Silicon review that said that went after me in a way that felt like they hadn't removed who I am from the character that I was playing. It kept using me by name, and he's this and he's that. But I think, yeah, thank you for removing me from the part. I appreciate that.
Because you were so not an asshole.
I try not to
See?
be.
So.
I'm to a fault, I think, more of a people pleaser. And this guy, that's what was, in fact, liberating about it, was that I didn't have to be conscious about hurting people's feelings or how this was perceived or how his actions were affecting others. He's a very, self-centered, he's a narcissist, and I thought that'd be interesting and a little bit easier to take when he goes through what he goes through.
Is that sort of what you see as sort of the purpose of making him a questionably likable character? I mean,
yeah, I think it helps with the with that transformation and with an audience accepting that and going along for that ride, which you kind of have to. Originally, he was even more so. He was even less morally sound. He in the script was going to, the story that he was chasing was an orgy, some crazy Manitoban orgy? I don't know if that's ever been said before. The first time ever in print. And I felt like if he were to be cheating on his girlfriend so unapologetically and so overtly, you might lose the audience to the point where, you know, anything that happens to this guy throughout the rest of the movie is inconsequential, if anything, welcomed, you know. So I like, I think keeping him a bit more amoral helps the audience accept the ride that they're about to go on. It makes it easier to go on it. But then he does have that moment that, which I think is essential too in making him in any way redeeming, where he apologizes to her. I mean, when all of his bravado and his persona he's cultivated is just stripped away because he's facing what he's facing, and he says and he finds the words to apologize. I think that was like a really essential moment. Otherwise, it would just be this, you know, this asshole getting tortured. Which
was that also the thinking behind revealing how bad he was a little bit more as the film went on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that would be more of a Kevin question, but yeah, I think it just dropping those little reminders that he's getting his comeuppance in a lot of ways.
What do you do when you see a script come to you from Kevin Smith and you're reading it and it goes, Kevin Smith wants me to be a what?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the script was preceded by this letter that he wrote me, and I went back and reread it just to make sure this was true. And he never mentions anything about walruses in the letter. It was, it was probably strategic on his part. It's just a lot of flattery, which is always a good way to hook an actor. And he described it as a character study, you know, between these two people, which I always saw it. I don't know if it was because of that letter that I then always saw it as being that. Even when it was easier to describe it to people as a walrus movie just for the sake of, you know, efficiency. But I always saw it as that, and that was the appeal, was that I got to go. I got to do these very intimate scenes with Michael Parks and then the challenge of, you know, doing all the walrus stuff and it being and playing it as real as possible. I mean, that represented a real like acting challenge. I know it sounds silly to say, but I always saw it as that, as like what a great honor. You know, it always felt like that he was entrusting me with this part. It felt like what an arc that I never even conceived of a character going through. So I was excited to, nobody wanted me, my agents were wary of it, to say the least. They really, I remember my agent and my manager at the time were rarely opinionated about things, and that was a real strong opinion they had. We should do this. But I felt like, you know, there was obviously a very good chance that it would be a joke, and it would, and there still is. I mean, for some people, I haven't read all the reviews, thank God. But it depends on how you take something like that. And I always felt like, good or bad, it was going to be an experience. It was going to be a memorable, and therefore, I think, valuable experience to do it. So, yeah, if you're gonna go down with a ship, go down with a fun ship.
Can you talk a little bit about finding sort of the comfort zone of acting through the prosthetics and the suit? Because I'm sure that you start out feeling a little self-conscious once you're in it, and it's physically restrictive, but you've got to get some real emoting through all of that,
Yeah.
those layers of plastic and foam.
You know, something happens when you're, after you put that stuff on that is impossible to fully articulate, but it's like, it's like you're in your own world. I mean, physically too, it's almost like everything becomes magnified, you're breathing, and you become that much more aware of your body when you're that limited with its use, if that makes any sense. Like, and so the outlets for communication that you do have become amplified, and I don't know, I felt myself like